All right, so we're just going to go through your syllabus here. Welcome to Value Investing. We're going to just take a minute and go through your syllabus and kind of maybe just go over the basic direction that we're going to take in this class. One of the primary things that we want to do is look at corporations, businesses, from the vantage point of an investor, right? And there are two main reasons to do this. One of them is so that as you grow as a business, you know how to invest your own money, right? So, I mean, that's part of it. But that's really only a small part of what you're going to get out of this class. My expectation is that long before you ever have tons of money to invest in somebody else's business, you're going to have done some things to make your business successful, right? So that's the second part, is that if you can understand what a stockbroker or an investor is going to be looking for in their to place their money, what are they looking for when they invest? Because they're looking at certain things because they know that certain things make a company healthy. Certain ratios, certain parts of your financial statements that they're looking at to determine if you're a healthy company or not. And so one of the main things I want you to get out of this class is understanding what is it that's going to make your business healthy, right? So if you understand what an investor is looking for, it'll better help you understand what will make your company successful. So really, as a small business owner or a manager, I think this is an important class for you to take because it will cause you to see your business from a slightly different standpoint, right? The standpoint of an investor. And the investors have honed their craft over the years. They know the difference financially between a healthy company and an unhealthy company. They understand the ratios and what they're looking for in terms of your cash flow to your debt or different things like that. And we'll talk about some of these, but we want to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of an investor, right? And as an investor, if we went to a corporation and we said, show us your financial statements, we would want to be able to read that company's financial statements clearly enough so that we would know whether it's a good investment or not, right? So that's what you're going to learn how to do in this class, is how to look at their financial statements and what to be looking for to determine if they're healthy. The side benefit is then, once you know what a healthy company looks like, then you know where to tweak your own company and where to apply your effort there to get your own company to be something that somebody else would come in and say, now that's a healthy company, right? Okay, so the textbook for this class is called Financial Intelligence. It's called A Manager's Guide to Knowing What the Numbers Really Mean, right? And so this is a book on how to read the financial statements, not just how to write them, right? So that's kind of the difference between this class and the accounting class. In accounting, we're teaching you how to take your own financial information and turn it into a financial statement, right? So you're as a business owner or as a member of a company, you've got all kinds of financial data coming to you, right? Just in all kinds of forms. Receipts, bills, invoices, all kinds of different ways that financial data is coming to you. And so the accounting class is about taking that information and putting it into coherent statements, right? Now this class is going to be about just taking the statement itself and learning to understand what that statement tells you about a business, right? So that's where it's going to be a little different. That's why I've got this book. It does a good job of explaining to you why you're reading the financial statements. What is it that the financial statements tell you? What is the story behind financial statements, right? So that's the textbook for this class. You want to make sure you grab that. So I'm just going to work my way through your syllabus really quick. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you'll notice, as far as the textbook reading, I just put in there, read as needed. Your reading quiz is week 7, right? So just make sure that you're ready for that. The reading quiz is done online. Once you start, you've got 45 minutes from the time you start. to be able to do all your questions. You can't pause it. If you try that, it's not going to work because it counts down from the moment you hit go. So make sure you're in a place where you can take the quiz easily, no distractions, all that kind of stuff. And as long as you do your reading, you should be fine. There's nothing on there that's designed to trick you. It's just designed to make sure that you have read the textbook. If something happens and you have some kind of a technical malfunction, or maybe it's not a technical malfunction, maybe it's just something happened while you were in the middle of taking the test and it was emergency and you had to leave the house. There is no retake on the test, but there is a form of grace, and it's you can write a 5-page paper on the book, right? So that is designed to where it's only emergencies, because nobody wants to write the 5-page paper. So it's designed so that if you have an emergency, you don't fail your assignment, but it's also designed that unless you have an emergency, you will probably want to take the online test. It's much easier, okay? All right, so you've got your discussion boards, right? Questions will be posted, and every 2 weeks you'll have a new question through the first 6 weeks. We don't do one in the last 2 weeks because you're focused on your final papers and reading quizzes and finals and all that stuff. But through the first 6 weeks, every other week, you've got your discussion board posts are due, and they're due Saturday at the end of week 2 at midnight, and at the end of week 4 and at the end of week 6, that Saturday night at midnight. And your papers are due on Thursday of whatever week that they're due, okay? So the one major paper that you have in this class is your financial analysis paper, right? Which is the main, idea behind this class. And so that's the one paper that you're going to want to put all your focus into for this class. It's 30% of the grade. A full third of this class just about is in this one paper. So let's take a look at that real quick. What I'm wanting you to do here is to get some experience analyzing a company, right? So we're going to do what we're learning, so to speak, right? So you're going to take 3 different publicly traded companies, okay? Now, publicly traded means that it's on the stock market, right? So this means it's a large company, right? That kind of thing. I don't want you analyzing just small companies. And the other reason behind doing the publicly traded company, because you could analyze financial statements of any organization, whether it's small or large, as long as they've kept their records, you can analyze their financial statements. But the reason I want you to do the publicly traded companies, something that say it's on the New York Stock Exchange, that's a very simple one, or the NASDAQ. I would stick to those two if I were you, but because those are kind of the main ones. So look for something that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange or something on NASDAQ, because in order to be a publicly traded company, they have to make their financial information publicly available, right? Because the whole country, the whole world really has the opportunity to invest in them because they're a publicly traded company. They're traded on the stock market. And so government doesn't want people just guessing, right, about where they should invest their money. And so if you're gonna take part and be a company that's traded publicly, then part of the deal is you have to make your financial statements public so that everyone can see them. And so for a class like this, the advantage is then if you use a publicly traded company for your paper, then you have access to their financial documents and you can review their financial documents very easily. So for this paper, you're going to have 3 different companies. I'm going to give you a little guidelines here for who you can choose, but you're going to pick 3 different companies. And basically what I'm wanting is you're going to write a separate kind of maybe like 2-page paper or so, minimum 2 pages for each company. And I don't want you necessarily to regurgitate the numbers to me, right? Just repeat back to me their numbers. Every once in a while you may find a number that's important to reference while you're making your point, but this is not I don't want you to just give me charts with their numbers on it. I want you to take the numbers that you're reading and translate this into your own language. So you would say, hey, I looked at their debt ratio is this, which tells me that they're a very unstable company in reality because they're carrying so much debt or something like that. Or I look at their cash reserves compared to their debt, and they have much more in cash reserves than they have in debt. And so I feel like this is a very stable company for the long term. Stuff like that. I want you to go in and look through their financial statements, and then you're going to write a 2-page write-up about that company, and you'll be analyzing how you view their financial picture, right? What do you see? What do the numbers tell you about this company? Okay, so you're going to do that 3 different times with 3 different companies. So the guidelines are that one of the companies I want you to do needs to be from whatever industry that you're interested in, that you see yourself in long term, right? So if you're in automobiles, right, you need to pick a company from the auto industry. If you're in you're interested in hospitality, if you're interested in retail, if you're interested in electronics, whatever it is, if you've got a specific industry, maybe food or real estate, whatever it is, I want you to pick one publicly traded company from your industry, because I want you to see, what does a large company in your industry look like? How do they structure their debt? How have they chosen to manage their finances? Do they have a lot in savings? Do they not have? What does it look like? Do they have more in assets? Some companies keep small amounts in cash, all right? And so if you looked at them initially, you might think, oh, that's a very unstable company. But then you start looking at their balance sheet and realize that they have lots of assets, right? Maybe say a hotel company, maybe they've only got a small percentage in cash, but then you start looking at the 2,000 massive hotels that they own, and you begin to realize they've got quite a bit of resources, but they're tied up in physical assets. Some companies, if you look at a car lot, a lot of their money is tied up in inventory, right? And they've got, at any given time, maybe $1 million worth of cars. When you add up, all these $50,000 and $60,000 cars all across the lot, they may have $1 million or more just in inventory at any given time, right? And so you want to look at how does some company, whatever company in your industry, how they have their finances set up. The second one is, I want you to go to a financial company, right? Because I think it's interesting to look at how a company that specializes in finance, how they have their selves set up, right? So they're a company that's all they do is worry about finance and money and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of companies you could do. You could do a company that's maybe a stock brokerage or something, or maybe a company that makes loans, or a bank, some kind of credit union, AmScott, something, but it has to be something in the financial sector. It can be a home mortgage company, anything like that. But it needs to be a company that is from the financial sector. I want you to analyze their financial statements. And then the third one we're going to do, just kind of for fun, is the local business giant here in our area in Central Florida is Walt Disney World, right? And so I want you to analyze Disney's financial statements and talk about how they have themselves structured, right? Okay, so that's the main part of this class, other than the lessons and the text, is making sure you get that paper put together. So if you've got any questions, you can shoot me an email, and then you'll have a final. The video for the review will be up in week 7, and then you can take the final in week 8. Okay? So any questions, send me an email. We'll get started here next week with your lessons, and we'll kind of work our way through. But just understand the core of what we want. The focus of how you want to treat your learning for this class is to be able to look at any company and be able to know the story of the company by just reading their financials. If you read a lot of books, investors, if somebody wants to, that's a professional investor, and say somebody comes to them as a small business and says, hey, will you invest in my company, like a seed company or something like that, and angel financing is something that they call that, and so you go to some angel investor or anything like that, anybody that you're wanting to invest in your company who does this for a living, and you put together a business plan, 9 times out of 10, other than maybe just reading the front page, they're going to go straight to the financial section, and they're going to see what is your company doing financially, because it's the language that they speak is the finances. And so as a business student, you need to be able to speak that language as well. You need to be able to look at a company's financial statements and know all that you need to know about that company from those financial statements. Obviously, there's other things that are important. Who's leading the company? Did they go through a leadership change? Is their product still relevant? What is their infrastructure? So there's other things that are important, but ultimately, the first place that you're going to go to is the financial statements, because leadership is often factored in to the finance. They've got bad leadership, they're probably going to have bad finances, right? If they've got a good product, they're probably going to have good finances. So there are some variables that your wisdom will have to apply. If they've had a leadership change, maybe that's not reflected in the financials yet. Or if, for instance, if they were, say, tapes, right? Remember audio cassettes? Obviously, those were going out. There was a transition between those and CDs, right? So if the company you're investing in was an audio cassette company, their financial statements may look great, but the product itself is no longer relevant, and so the company, unless they change, is not going to be able to replicate their previous success, right? And so financials don't necessarily tell all of the story, but you can get a majority of what you need to know from the financial statements, and you need to be able to read those. You need to be able to go right in, go right to it, know what the ratios are, know what net profit is, and gross profit, and profit after tax, and all these different things. You need to understand these and be able to read them. You need to be able to go right and figure out how much of their debt do they have, and how much of it is healthy debt, and how much of it is not healthy, right? If it's just debt for inventory and it's just part of their cycle, and it's just a natural thing that they do, they take out debt on the inventory, and as it's sold, it gets cycled back in. That's one thing. If it's excessive debt, just for because the company's tanking, right, and so they're using debt to prop the company up, then that's bad debt, right? So and you have to be able to go in and look at their balance sheet and see where is the debt, how is it divided, what is it broken up as. You want to look at their assets and be able to see, you know, if they had a downturn for 6 months or a year, or a bad economic cycle like we had in 2008, where many industries are failing, do they have the cash reserves to weather that storm, right? Or many companies during that time were trying to grow so quickly that they were in debt up to their eyeballs, because every chance they had, they'd take on more debt to open up new locations and all that, and they look like a very large company. But it's only if they keep growing. When the economy shrinks, all they had was all of this debt because they were just growing as fast as they could. And the economy shrinks, and the amount of income's not coming in anymore, and they no longer have the capacity to keep paying the bills, right? Because their growth was not because they had the cash to grow. Their growth was because they took out loans to grow, right? So you need to be able to look at it, because that's a big difference between a company that is using cash to grow versus a company that's using loans to grow. The stability of that is really important, right? Especially if you're going to invest in them long term. You would want to know, how are they structured, right? So anyway, so in this course, we want you to think about those things so that you should be able to look at any company's financial statements and get some kind of a mental picture about where they are, and be able to have some kind of comprehension about this company just on strictly reading the numbers, okay?